Excited. I will mute myself now.
Very good. Starting now. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present the solution for laptops to school. My name is Svet. I'm a CTA candidate from Washington, D.C. area. So this is a nonprofit, large volume of transactions happening here. It donates laptops to over 2,000 schools around the world, and it also sells them to third-party recycling companies. They have 50 offices across the US and Europe. They're organized in 12 country-based regions, and they also have 2 shipping and receiving hubs located in both Europe and the United States. They have 5,000 corporate donors, and on average, they're donating 300 laptops per month each. So that's about 1.5 million laptops monthly, and they also need to scale. So this solution will attempt to do just that, is become scalable. So the strategy I propose here is a single org. We are going to be keeping the majority of these systems. Inventory systems is just going to be no longer a single source of truth, so it'll have to be integrated, cleaned up, deduped, and we'll use an ETL to connect it to Salesforce. There's also a shipping fulfillment system that we're going to need to retain as well as integrate. Currently it's disconnected. And a cloud storage system, which we're retaining. It's free. It is a cloud-based system. It's not on-premise, but at the same time, there's no requirement to actually connect it to Salesforce. So we're just going to keep it off-platform. We will use multi-currency since we're dealing with multiple regions of the world. And for localization, we're going to use language translations via translation workbench, custom labels, of course, the customer community language picker, as well as templates for document generation. For data sharing, we're going to use the principle of least privilege. So you'll see a lot of org-wide defaults being set to private. So the risks and assumptions here, the automation process across the board is what's required for this to be successful. The risk of that is, of course, undesired operations. So the great emphasis should be placed on testing before solutions are deployed. And Salesforce now becomes a system of record. Therefore, data migration is definitely a big risk here, as well as the visibility of records. So additional testing will have to be done here. Current systems are not suitable for archiving vault records. We will see there are transactional records that will present a challenge in terms of LDV. There's no data warehouse currently, so I'm suggesting that we add a data warehouse and offload the rest of the information on the existing systems as much as possible. The government database is updated infrequently and at regular intervals. Number one, it's a government system. Number two, it does not have to be consulted all the time. The risk of that is unavailability of the system could be during the updates. And the mitigation for that is that we will store the values of fair market values of laptops in price books. Moving on to access and licenses, as you can see, there are quite a few of them. Lots of them using reports. So for donation coordinators, we're just going to give them Sales Cloud license for basically donation management. They need to see numbers, they need to see orders, etc. So that's why they'll be fine with Sales Cloud. IT specialist, security team, they kind of share responsibilities. They need to be able to manage cases and see lots of objects across the board. They're definitely internal, so they get Service Cloud. School allocation coordinators, they do quite a bit. So in addition to Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, they also need Salesforce surveys. And they need to be able to use omnichannel. So their justifications, of course, volunteer management, and that's case management as well. So recycling ACs, these folks primarily deal with third-party resellers or recycling companies rather. And for them, they will be looking at opportunities as well as sales reports. Managers is something that I forgot to add here, Sales Cloud as well, so they could also oversee the activity of the recycling ACs and see reports when it comes to opportunities. So volunteers, I am giving external users, mostly external users, Custom Community Plus, so that they could also see reports. Volunteers would want to become case team members. And I do not see a use case for partner community in here, although it's very tempting to do that. So virtual experts, Service Cloud, because of chat, omni-channel, that sort of responsibility that they're going to have. They will perhaps become case team members as well. And Einstein chatbots, that will be an org-wide kind of license, but that will be used to mitigate a large volume of queries. So third-party recyclers, customer community, I would say that should be sufficient here. Actually, no, plus, because they will need to see reports as well. And submit laptop RFPs, that will be a custom object. Students, they're participating in the forums, so chatter-free doesn't hurt. However, they really don't need a license. They're off-platform users. Okay, so here's the role hierarchy. We're replicating the same hierarchy across the board since the business process is pretty much the same. So the external users are delineated here, with the exception of recyclers. They're not part of they were not part of the hierarchy. I guess I will make them part of the hierarchy now, so please forgive that oversight. And recycling ACs will be retaining record ownership over that. So technically, as you can see, there are coordinators. There are school coordinators and donation coordinators, and also coordinators here. So essentially, it's the same role, but I had to split them up into different licenses because they do serve different purposes there. Okay, moving on to the system landscape. A little cluttered here. So once again, single org. We're going to start with the fact that we'll need 3 clouds here. DocuSign Gen, DocuSign e-signature for obvious reasons, and Tableau CRM for reporting across a variety of systems. So behind the firewall, we're securing ESB with the mutual SSL TLS for at-rest and in-transit security. And we're going to integrate with the shipping fulfillment system via the REST API. It's a web-based system, so we're assuming it has REST. Government web service, although technically it could be in the cloud, but we don't know that for sure. It has a web, it does expose web services, so we're going to connect that to the ESB via the web service endpoint that the ESB is going to expose, assuming that government web service is going to be behind its own firewall as well. Now, inventory is a current single source of truth. You will see that there's a hybrid solution. We will primarily be using in the ETL to communicate with inventory in both directions, and we're securing that with SSL TLS as well. And ESB comes into certain very brief interactions, remote process invocation, request and reply, specifically for the donation batch records. And the requirement was that systems need to be standardized. Access should be brought together in a kind of a single entry point. So we're going to connect the inventory system to Okta for single sign-on here. And we're going to use the IDP initiated flow for that. Now, asset management system is not going to be used by everyone, but some of the larger corporations are going to be uploading their assets via ETL. The others will upload their own CSVs via ETL as well for standardization purposes. And here's the data warehouse that I'm recommending. It's not currently part of the requirements, but I will recommend that to the stakeholders because that will be very useful to maintain and mitigate large data volumes. So I'd like to just point out a few things on a data model, but I'll cover this during the requirements. So there are a few custom objects here. So tax info is an aggregate object that we would like to decouple from the rest of the solution, just to give visibility only to a certain group. Then for skills, I'm going with the custom object, so as not to require another license for work.com or some other solution. It's going to be a pretty simple, straightforward custom object just to track skills of volunteers. On the surveys, I'd like to stick with Salesforce surveys. I called out that license. So we'll have the survey as well as survey result, master detail, the junction object there. Laptop bid, I'll talk about that in more detail. So this is just to expose there's a requirement to give a table to third-party recyclers so they can bid on certain types of products. However, the internal users will want to link that to an opportunity and work that opportunity. So that's why it's there. So asset app, as well as apps that, these are the applications, software applications that need to be loaded onto the laptop. It presents a need for certain applications to be loaded only on certain individual laptops. That's why we have the junction there. And a donation batch becomes kind of a main catch-all objects when it comes to incoming and outgoing donations. We'll see how that works. And of course, from that flows the order and order line items in that fashion. So for the reporting requirements, let me get to that at the end. At this point, let me move on to the business process requirements. So again, we are automating as much as possible, and we're going to be cleansing various errors in data. However, there will be some strategies to make sure that the errors are mitigated in the future. So no need to fill out any more paper applications or PDF-based applications anymore. What we're going to do is give the school representatives authenticated experience cloud. They will create a case using a standard LWC and fill that out, attach documentation, and that's going to open the case for them to apply for the various laptops. And there's a requirement that if they've already applied and received, that has to be approved by the manager, so that case can go into an approval process. Corporations initiated laptop donations. So these are the ones that are not as advanced as those who have their own asset management systems. So these guys are going to be uploading, they could upload them directly through Experience Cloud with file upload, but I would prefer that they actually do that through an ETL, and that's going to be automatically parsed and transformed and sent into Salesforce. That's why I'm calling out ETL right here. So the CSV file can have different formats, but most importantly, it's grouped by PC or Mac, which suggests that we can actually use product families in the product catalog and then create assets from that, which is where we're going to store the serial numbers at the time of creation. So in order for this to work, I propose to create an automated flow where the case is created. It creates the donation batch record. And this kind of gives a heads up to the internal users that soon there's going to be an upload of assets via manual way or through an ETL. So the assets are loaded looking up to the donation record, and serial number is using the external ID throughout this solution. It's automatically indexed as well, so they will help us with mitigation of large data volume through custom indices and filtered queries. So this is actually a process that's going to repeat itself in a couple of ways. Donation coordinators are basically creating shipping records and fulfillments. This is all about shipping things. So once we've uploaded the assets and created the donation batch, from that, once the allocation has taken place, an order is created from a donation batch. So the donation batch is going to give us the overall number of laptops as well as the value. So the shipping system, shipping fulfillment system is integrated via an ESB right over here. And so we are assuming again that the REST API exists. It's a web-based system. So for that, we will enable an API-only user permission, restrict login IP ranges, and enforce SSL TLS mutual authentication user permission. And we're using the remote process invocation request and reply for the purposes of just sending the order, which should be sufficient to notify the system that there's going to be a certain amount of laptops coming. So for the inventory system, we're going to do a data load to the inventory, syncing up the inventory with Salesforce, so we'll know exactly which laptops are coming based on the serial number. The email will be sent to the corporation with the shipping details. So once the request and reply completes and we have a response from a shipping fulfillment system that an order has been received, the flow will kick off. This will be an auto launch flow that will kick off and send an email to the corporation with the shipping details that can come from the order object, such as address and origination date, etc. the assets management system that store attributes of systems. As I said before, create a case which creates donation batch records, ETL data load follows up to the donation, connecting to the donation batch record, and the serial number is using external ID. Second time this happens. The intake process, checking laptops against personally identifiable information. So here we're going to need to have a checkbox, which is going to delineate that there is PII. From that, perhaps we'll change the record type, and we will just give the security specialists access to that. So since the laptops are tracked as assets, that's what they're going to be working on. So we're going to link the asset to a case. The button will allow it to create, for the creation of a case with an on-launch flow, which will set the checkbox and send an alert with a link to a case looking up to an asset, and that's going to be assigned to the security team queue. So whoever picks up that case is going to have all the information that they need. So then the security team is going to review the PII files, which basically has all the information that's located on the asset record, the batch, serial number, file name, type of PII, etc. And the communication should notify the corporation that basically there's what to do with the PII. So in this case, we're sending out an email with a predefined template. And the template is going to have the various merge fields that originates from pick list located on case and asset records. So file name is a text field, PII type is a pick list, and email basically will connect two links. So these are off-platform users. The corporations could donate it. The laptops, they will have a choice. Click on the link to ship the hard drive back. They're going to be redirected to the community login where the corporation logs in. Then allows for the case to be updated, and the case changes via case status changes via a flow. Or they can also do the same thing and basically just erase the information, but keep the hard drive, which perhaps increases the value of the laptop. So this has to happen within 5 days, and in case it doesn't, there's going to be a kind of an escalation for which we're actually going to use a scheduled flow. And I'm not sure if the escalation rule can be triggered on email. I would assume not. Therefore, I would prefer to have a subflow, which will give 24 hours to the security specialist to delete and remove the PII checkbox, in which case the IT specialist who owned the record previously is going to get that case back. It will be reassigned to them using the prior value formula field, which is going to be stored behind the scenes of the page layout. And it will notify that original owner that they are an owner once again. So if the PII flag is not removed, however, we're going to continue with that scheduled flow. What we'll do is we'll take a look at the user record and get the manager through the user record, get the manager user ID and assign it to the manager. So pretty standard there. Okay. The donation intake process, of course, the manufacture date, processor type, amount of memory, etc. Will go on the asset object. We would like to standardize that information as much as possible. There's only a finite number of components that a laptop uses, so that should not be all that difficult. And again, we'll link that to the product record as well. So that is there's future potential to automate that based on certain criteria such as attributes. This is about the government estimating website. We're integrating via the ESB endpoint, web service endpoint. So when an outgoing donation batch record is created, asset looks up to the donation batch. And so what we're going to have to do is look up the fair market value and add that to the asset. So the triggered ETL job after then will update the inventory system with donation batch ID. And realize this is a little crazy, so I will have to explain that during Q&A. Monetary value of the laptops designated as schools should be updated in the inventory system in real time. So I'm assuming here that it is enough to put one value in the system. We don't have to put the values for each and every laptop in real time. that would take actually quite a bit of time to update them via an ETL. So this is where the ESB comes into play, which updates the inventory system by a remote process invocation request and reply. It is updating the donation batch record only, which is basically going to give us the roll-up of all the values, and that's going to be one number, one monetary value for the entire batch. So if it's required to update every single laptop, there is a price field on assets, standard price field, so we can update that in the inventory system via following ETL job. So this will be a larger lift for scalability purposes in the future. We can recommend to remaster the inventory system in Heroku and just utilize Heroku Connect to sync records, so eliminating these dual connections with ETL and ESB. Assigning the school ACs or recycling ACs in the region based on the volume of records currently assigned to them. This is a load balancing capability that is required here. I was thinking about using omnichannel. However, prefer that these users can be both active or inactive in the system. They will still get the assignment. Load balancing is done actually a lot better by the distribution engine app as opposed to the omnichannel. So I'm choosing that for that reason. So now we're talking about selling laptops to third-party recycling companies. So first of all, we need to figure out which recycling companies pay the most for specific laptop models. I propose to use Salesforce Analytics snapshots, and the source will be a custom report on assets, since the assets become the assets of the third-party recycling company, so it can be actually reported on them. I also think that we can definitely use the opportunity object and have another kind of a snapshot that would give us the opportunity report as well. So at this point, we would like to also give the third-party recycling companies access to populate a table with data that could be determined the rates that they will pay for recycled laptops. So I did consider giving these companies access to opportunities, which would have to give them partner community cloud license. I decided against that because they really just need to bid on, they don't need to work on opportunities together with the internal users. They just need to bid on laptops, propose what it is that they are willing to pay. So a custom laptop bid object is what they're going to get. They have enough in getting the product read-only. So as a community user, and therefore the bids will have to be basically, so laptop bids is all they're going to see together with the product, which is going to be a laptop bid will look up to the product. So the attributes from the laptops are definitely going to come from the product object, so they will know what they're actually bidding on. Recycling C would like to see the 3 recommended third-party recycling companies based on this data. So this would have to be a custom report for the laptop bid object, which is going to be filtered on laptop attributes and sorted on the dollar amount descending. And when they select a recycling company, the inventory system should be updated. So at this point, since we're shipping the laptops to third-party recyclers, we can create the outgoing donation batch. Again, asset looks up to the donation batch. Apex job will update assets with the donation batch ID, and the triggered ETL job will then update this inventory system with the donation batch ID, and keeping things synced up between Salesforce as well as the inventory system. For reviewing the applications for laptops in the region and running a search in inventory system to see which schools have not received laptops in 12 months, this is easily stored in the account as a formal field. So as a case is open for by a particular school, we'll be able to see on the account if they've received any laptops or not. Optimizing the number and allocation of available laptops, classes, and software. So this is where we would use the product catalog attributes such as product family, Mac PC, as well as various attributes as pick lists to match. That's how we would do that. Therefore, product, price book entry. And if a school has received more than 500 total laptops, again, that would be assets on account. Then a case would have to proceed on to the manager for approval. and the user IDs of the manager we can get from the user record of the actual school AC, who is the case owner in the Service Cloud. Volunteers are going to be preparing the laptops, so they'll be working over here with assets, apps, and L2 laptops to schools apps. So they are masters contacts in the system, so they will actually be given surveys to complete. They'll have to get that particular capability. In the survey result is a junction object that's going to be stored against contact. I'm not saying that this is an LTV only because survey doesn't have to be run after every single laptop. But as a batch, maybe once a week or once a month. So custom skill object is what they're going to need to use to basically show what they're good at. And again, I'm going with the custom object because I don't want to worry about giving out access to work.com and only using the skill object. So this is going to be pretty simple, straightforward object with less than 100 skills. To update the inventory system and create a shipping record when we're finalizing the allocation for the school. Once this case is closed, we will create an outgoing donation batch again, create an order, trigger remote process invocation request and reply via ESB to the shipping fulfillment system. And again, this is a very similar type of process. So at this point, the assigned volunteer, who is the primary contact on the account contact relationship, will get a school allocation letter. So in the local language. So in this case, DocuSign Gen does a very good job pulling information from multiple objects. The template would have to be already pre-written in a local language. The merge fields are going to be basically numbers. So we've got the value, delivery date, the account corporation name doesn't change from language to language, and also the same for the context. So there's really no need to translate anything dynamically. So we're keeping the same language across the board. I mean, different languages in different templates. So fixed language, that's what I meant to say. When all laptops in donation batch are allocated to schools sent for recycling, corporations should receive a tax donation letter. So I was thinking of actually keeping that on the account, but there will be a requirement to say that only certain users can have access to this information. So therefore, the tax donation letter will pull information from the donation batch. Let me show you how this works. So we've got the price book entry, which is going to feed the order line items, which is going to go rolled up to the order and shown on the donation batch as a formula field. And from there, we can pull that number and put it in the letter. So automatic signature, again, now we're using DocuSign signature, and this DocuSign Gen document is going to be DocuSign native functionality to DocuSign. And then once it's signed, the flow is going to be based on DocuSign envelope status, which is going to be looking up to the order. And based on that, we can launch a flow to schedule a visit for the school to set up laptops. So that's, I'm assuming that's going to be kicked off and done manually or via email. The volunteers who come to school would be given an opportunity to use a standard Salesforce app using an app exchange product called Check-in. That's pretty much all they're doing on the app. So that's why I chose this very simple, straightforward functionality. And here they are beginning their day by downloading the various software from the 20 software applications that they have from the cloud system, cloud storage system. So cloud storage system, we want to connect to Okta to be able to give them SSO capabilities and provision, deprovision users as requested. But besides that, cloud storage system is not connected to Salesforce because it goes from software, basically it's accessed directly from the website of the laptop itself. Software gets downloaded, and then they update in Salesforce which software package or packages they actually use for that particular laptop. So this is the use for the asset app custom object here. It's a master detail to both. And I decided to not go with the child asset hierarchy type situation because then this asset app would be on the detail side of a custom object. So Volunteers need to be able to collaborate with other volunteers. So issue becomes a case and they both end up on a case team. Therefore, they need to be part of the hierarchy there. As far as recording the thank you videos on mobile devices, sharing with the company who donated laptops, yada, yada, yada. To kind of keep things simple, we have Service Cloud. With that come 2 licenses for social customer service. They can use Facebook or Twitter, just a simple post on Facebook or Twitter using the video storage there. They could tag the corporation. From that, a post gets created and assigned to a queue, which is then reviewed by somebody inside of laptops to school, which can then link that case to an account and notify a corporation of the post. Case closed. So I'm doing that so that there can be some oversight. And virtual experts are the ones that are going to actually troubleshoot software issues. So essentially, they are like customer support agents. And in real time, they're going to be using Salesforce chat, assuming there's going to be a large volume of cases. So actually, here is something it's impossible to decide how many cases exactly there are going to be. But I'm assuming that there will be LDV here. So we'll be using Einstein chatbots to cut down on the amount of cases and also route omnichannel, using omnichannel to route cases to the right people using the omnichannel skills, different from the skill objects, but we're going to infrequently update the omnichannel skills with skills and vice versa. So as far as migration requirements are concerned, so we're definitely going to be migrating a lot of information here, starting with the accounts context plus their key values such as donation amounts and perhaps other objects as well. For that, we'll be using ETL with the staging tables. Archiving strategy should be in place because the large data volume, 1.5 million records in multiple objects each month. So for that reason, I'm recommending offloading that to a data warehouse for cold storage. Accessibility. So again, we're using a lot of private objects, least privilege access principle. Only designated context corporations can see the tax donation amounts for the laptops donated by their corporations. So for that reason, we would use the tax donation amount. So I considered actually using that as a field on an account, but this is something that I'd like to actually change solution to use the tax info object where the tax donation amount will reside. So either we expose that object to them or not. Users of the L2S security team. So this is where we're going to be actually giving them access to the security team using the record type. And if the PII checkbox is checked, then the record type changes. The managers will get access using hierarchies, which is default for standard objects. So we're talking about assets here. And only DCs can modify the laptop rates, and we have third-party recyclers. So this is a validation rule in the laptop bid object. That's what this object would be primarily used for. Donation coordinators, laptop donations for the regions. So depending on how the region is used, we will definitely need some Apex sharing based on region field on the donation batch record. And therefore you'll see the laptop donations depending on what they want to see, really. So, okay, corporation tax ID donation letter should be visible to DCs. Another reason for using the tax info custom object, because the attached files via DocuSign Gen are going to live right here on the tax info object. Your volunteers should see school details, laptop serial numbers, shipping information only when they're assigned to set up laptops. They will get the access to the donation batch object when joining case team. Case sharing will be out of the box type situation because they get case team access. Consider using a lookup to user, but extra sharing complexity is unnecessary. Plus, there should be more than one sometimes volunteer to be able to get access to this. And internal users are accessing the new system using a corporate intranet. Therefore, Okta, and this will allow us to use IDP initiated flow. Volunteers are using social sign-on By the way, Active Directory also is our identity store here. Therefore, that goes into Okta as well. I'm saying here for the social sign-on using Facebook and Twitter credentials to sign into all systems that they access. So that I originally was thinking just Salesforce, but these guys only need to actually access Salesforce. That would be the modified OIDC flow. It's the most closely mimicking flow that I can think of, except there's no ID token that is actually allowed by Facebook. Therefore, it's modified. It's actually somewhat simplified. For reporting requirements. So top 10 corporations by region, accounts with cases and assets, region resides on account, can get propagated down to donation batch as well. And school reports, we've got their incoming, outgoing donation batch record types, so we can definitely report on the outgoing. Using assets and asset app records being in separate objects, as well as shipment records from the order, laptop fair market value that would go on the asset as well as in the product object. So that's what would comprise the school report, and case owner formula field will be located on the asset. So all this information can be, of course, shown within Salesforce, but since we're also using a data warehouse, inventory systems, so it would be great to master that in Tableau CRM and use multiple sources to feed into Tableau. So really the central object in this case, when you're reporting on donations, would be a donation batch, which I've already demonstrated how that's important. Monetary value as a batch per region, big numbers should come from the opportunity line items propagating up to donation batch via the order. And the list of software license expiration dates for all laptops allocated to school. So we do have this in two places. So the list of licenses, number of licenses per package, and the date, expiration dates can be located here on the L2S apps. That's the master catalog of licenses, as well as when they're activated, that's going to be per laptop stored on the asset app object. And trending report is showing the number of monetary value of laptops donated by top 10 corporations by quarter over the past 5 years. Okay, so first of all, that information is unclear if we necessarily need to store all of this in Salesforce. I would say not. Therefore, data warehouse comes in again. So we'll have to basically get that information, transform it, put it in the data warehouse, and Tableau CRM trending report will take care of showing us this type of a report, utilizing multiple inputs such as the laptop bid, the opportunity, of course, it counts as well. And that pretty much concludes my presentation. I did not talk about governance, but for everything I'm going to use, almost for everything, I'm going to use GitHub and Kopper, including testing, deployments, and within Kopper, I'm going to use Kopper Plan, which is the application lifecycle management tool. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great job.
All set. Let's do Q&A.
Nice. Now let's do a 10-minute break. Jonida and I have to talk first.
Okay.
All right. Shall we go to a breakout room, Johann, or?
No, Svet can just turn off the sound and we will chat you once you're done. Can you please go to the, we trust you, Svet, that you actually turn off the sound. Can you please, yes, we saw it. Can you, oh, no, he can't see it. Can you please go to the licenses, the slide, please?
Yes. So, you know what, let me do this. Let me step away and you send me a message via Slack or LinkedIn, and you can see that I'm not here in the room. Okay.
It's all good. We trust you. It's not. Okay.
But I won't be able to hear you if I'm, you know,
yeah.
So need some
can you please pause the recording? Yes.
Yes, of course. Stop share recording, pause.
Good.
Alles schlecht, yeah.
Did you listen? No.
I did not. No, I was downstairs.
Okay. Let's. Can I start, please? So, can you please walk me through your use of opportunities?
Yes, I actually struggled with that one quite a bit. So the opportunities would be used primarily for selling laptops to third-party recyclers. So the income would be derived from that. Therefore, I figured we use the opportunity for better recording. And that's an internal use case. Did I say recording reporting? So that really is quite a simple situation where, forget this third party, let me see the little hierarchy here. Recycling ACs, they'll be using opportunities. Does that make sense?
Can you maybe, Jonida, does this make sense to you?
Yeah. I won't say if it makes sense now. I will just ask some follow-up questions around how do you model the products, and what do you model in the assets? What do you model in the products? That was not clear to me.
It was not clear. Okay, sure. So we've got the inventory. The inventory are the actual laptops that are being donated by corporations. And they're either consumed by schools or they're consumed by third-party recyclers. So one is a donation and one outgoing donation, and one is a sale, okay? So the inventory system needs to be synced up with Salesforce, but this is where actual inventory of laptops is recorded. We're mastering the inventory in Salesforce, in the products, price books, price book entries, as well as assets. So actual inventory that's coming in is reflected in assets, but it has to conform to, I guess, the product catalog of, okay, so this is a laptop of Mac or PC, what type of processor, what kind of screen, what's the size of the laptop, and so on and so forth.
So one second, you have a CSV that you load, right? You said you're going to load this via ETL. You're going to give users ETL access. Did I understand that correctly?
I did say that. In retrospect, that may not be the best way to go. So that could be done via the custom community, yes. However, there's another use case for the ETL to load. That's if there's an asset management system for large corporations. That's when the ETL comes into play.
Okay, let's assume all users are very technical persons and they know the ETL tool perfectly and they can map. So what happens after you import this data? What happens in Salesforce? What kind of data is created? Are there assets and products created? How does it work?
So we're assuming that products are already in Salesforce, and because they keep getting the same type of laptop over and over and over. So we are really creating asset records via the ETL, and assets would be matched up with products using an internal process based on the most commonly identified attributes of the laptop itself. You know, starting with the product family. So if it's a Mac, it's going to be matched up with the Mac product. And next, based on size and so on. Does that make sense? I can see you're still confused.
Did you understand it, Johann? Maybe I was.
It's maybe,
okay.
I don't.
So you have one laptop is an asset? One laptop is an asset and a product?
One laptop is an asset. So it's a one-to-many relationship. So one laptop is definitely an asset because it also has to have the serial number attached to the asset record. That's usually where you use the asset object. But we need to classify how many of what product do we have, right? So in order to even begin selling them using opportunity line items and sending the information over to the shipping system using the order and order line items, we need to have that record in the product. So it's not a one-to-one match where we have the asset, same number of assets as the same number of products. But when you sell something, it's like a backwards flow. We create an asset first and then match it up with the existing product. Usually we have products and you create asset once you sell something. This is going backwards because it's an incoming donation and then it's an outgoing donation.
Okay, we can go on to not lose too much.
That's the best I can do on this one.
All good.
Okay.
Doing great, by the way.
Good. Can you please go to the reporting requirement?
Yes, I can.
Requirement number 1. Can you please explain me why you use Tableau CRM in that situation?
Yes. So I would like to use, obviously, if all the data was in Salesforce, I wouldn't really need to use Tableau. And I'm using Tableau here because I'm also introducing a data warehouse. This would be an enormous amount of records to just crunch to be crunched by Salesforce. And for that reason, I'm choosing Tableau to get a different additional source, because it's going back, I believe, 5 years right here.
Thank you. Then let's go to the you mentioned a formula field. This is in your in this section before laptop setup. Sorry, I didn't mention. I didn't. Requirement number 2 in the section laptop applications and donation intake. No, sorry, not the laptop. Sorry,
Okay.
my bad. Laptop allocation and matching.
And matching.
Yeah.
Or shipping, rather.
Shipping. You mentioned a formula field. Number 2, requirement number 2. Yeah, can you walk me through exactly how this formula field works?
Yes. So these are the schools that are applying for more laptops, and they need to see in the inventory system to see which schools have not received laptops in the past 12 months. Okay, so stores this in the account in front of it. Okay. In the inventory system, we are tracking donation batch, and we're also tracking order. Okay, so the order is right here, and donation batch is its parent object. So both of those are connected to an account. Kind of hard to see here, but they're both definitely connected via an account. And what perhaps I should mention is that the inventory system should absolutely have an account record there as well. So
can you say what does the formula field look like here?
Formula field is just simply pulling the information from the order object onto the account object, just so that you don't have to click into an order. It would be a complete roll-up. If there's multiple orders, it will show you how many laptops the school received in a given period.
How do formula fields support roll-ups?
It is possible to roll up order to account, I believe. So in this case, it would need 2 formula fields, one to show the roll-up and the other to show within the last 12-month period. So that could be a simple checkbox to say if greater than 0 and within this date period, then yes, they've received donations. And if unchecked, then no. I apologize, that was unclear.
Okay, can you, as far as I understood the requirement, that the school as they currently review the application for their, they run a search in the inventory system which schools have not received laptops in the past 12 months. What alternative solution could you think of?
They could search for orders, really. They could actually go directly into the inventory system and just look for it there, which has nothing to do with Salesforce. Those are some of the ones that come to mind. We could master the...
1 second, you said that you're giving schools the customer community plus because of reports. Are you now using reports or not for them?
Well, these are the school ACs, so these are the internal users. So we can definitely use reports there as well. Okay. I just wanted to say, okay, if there's a case, there's an account, and the account can show that number, which can also be reflected on the case. That would be quicker than writing a report. Oh.
Okay, sorry, I missed that about the. I thought this was the schools. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of.
Anyway, yeah. How do you model the donations and the allocations. Can you walk me through that process, please?
Sure, I will attempt to do that. So donations, I'm modeling donations primarily through the donation batch object. So the batch would be, it's a master record that's going to say, okay, what kind of a donation is it? Is it donation to laptops to schools by corporations, or is it donation by laptops to schools So in this case, laptops to schools is a nonprofit, so it's a middleman. So we need to have incoming and outgoing donations. So that's the use case.
Okay, I understood that you're using the donation batch for the upload, right? To gather all the details together. But where do you put the quantities that were donated for a certain product?
That is exactly where the donation, sorry, I think I understand the question here. So the quantities would have to come from the order line items, as well as from assets. So let's say something needs to be shipped from laptops to schools out to the school. So an order is created, which has the order line items. And that's where you get the quantity. And that's an outgoing donation batch. The incoming donation batch, as in a donation to laptops to school, so that all of the applications can be added and hard drive clean, personal information needs to be removed. So the incoming batch, this is a record that's created in the system saying, okay, we're going to be sending this many laptops. Okay, so that's the first thing that happens, which is why we need to notify the inventory system that there's going to be a donation coming, request and reply. And once that's set in the inventory, then all of the assets are actually loaded into the inventory system through Salesforce using the ETL. So I know it's also a bit confusing, but so is the scenario. As far as the allocation is concerned, that process, there's not a clear requirement there. So I'm assuming that's done manually, and it's just groups of Salesforce, groups of assets are being allocated by the allocation coordinators. It's not an automated process here.
So you said you're going to keep the quantities in the order line item. Are you using the orders and order line item as well for the donation process, or just for schools to order laptops?
That is the donation process. So when school applies for a donation, the school is expecting to receive it for free. Therefore, they open a case first. That's their application to receive the donation. So once that's reviewed and approved, then the order is created, because the order needs to be shipped somewhere, right? And the order contains the address,
okay,
and the date, et cetera, et cetera.
So basically, the order is the donation process. It's not, basically it's the donation from the corporation. This is what you are modeling here, right?
It's a donation that goes from the nonprofit, which is the laptops to school. So
okay, so how then? Let me ask here another follow-up question around the order line item. Is the connection correct to the donation batch here then in this case? And is the donation batch not holding a lot of products probably with different quantities?
Well, the donation batch should be a fairly small object to which order looks up. It's basically just holding totals, a number. So this many laptops of just a total. That's it. And it's going to say, okay, is it an incoming? Is it outgoing? If it's incoming, who is donating 2 laptops to school? If it's outgoing, which school is receiving it? And then it can also show the address, which can be pulled from the order object. So it can use a formula field or a set of formula fields for that. And then order gets a roll-up of all of the order line items. So you can figure out, quantities of each type of laptop. and that can be also reflected on a donation batch. It's essentially like an accounting type object for accuracy's sake.
Can I maybe ask a requirement? Ask something about the require? Can you please go to your licenses slide, Svet? Can you please walk me through your justification for giving the school allocation coordinators the Sales Cloud and the Service Cloud license?
School allocation, the volunteer management. I suppose Service Cloud is what they need more of. A Sales Cloud, volunteer management. I honestly don't remember why I gave them Sales Cloud, because they don't necessarily need to have access to opportunities and sales objects.
Does what is the difference between, what is the big differences between the Sales and the Service Cloud license?
With the Sales Cloud, you can see opportunities. You can also, well, you can see opportunities using the Service Cloud, but there's forecasting and opportunity splits and opportunity teams, those types of objects and functionality. In Service Cloud, you've got Service Cloud specific entitlements, milestones, various escalation rules, omnichannel. So all of that functionality is happening there.
So what is your final answer for the license for this school allocation coordinators?
As long as they can see orders, the Sales Cloud license is not necessary here.
Thank you. What is your justification? What is your assumption of IT specialists, the security team? Are they also my assumption is the security team is a subgroup of the IT specialists. So IT specialists, some IT specialists are also part of the security team. If you can go to the requirement, how would you model it then?
So it wasn't clear to me that they were a subgroup. I figured they're two separate teams.
My assumption is they are a subgroup.
They're a subgroup. Okay. Then basically, who's on top of whom?
My assumption every laptop to the school a security team member is also a laptop to school IT specialist. So it's basically just specialization.
Okay, very good. So they're in the same hierarchy here. And they would be, how would I model that? I mean, a case team, so you give access to security team and you remove access from the IT specialists. In this case, actually, what we're doing is we're not even including them into the case team, but we're just changing ownership. And that's how the IT specialists lose access and security team gains access and vice versa.
How do you know which IT specialist is part of the security team?
They cannot have the same role, really.
How can you identify security team members who are part of the security team if we assume they are a subgroup?
We can give them permission set in that case, and they will be able to access certain fields or certain types of fields. In which case we would have to create a child case, and we would separate within field level security the person identifiable information.
Do you store personal identifying information on the case itself?
It will be encrypted, and then we can give them access to the encrypted information there.
Why do you store personal PII data on the case?
Let me check back in the requirements. PII.
So you only have a checkbox for the PII data, right? You are not loading that data into the system.
That is correct. That is correct. So in this case, what I believe the requirement is, it's enough to know that a certain laptop has PII. So that is the information. So you're absolutely right. It's not the PII that is stored on the case, but it's linking the fact that there is PII on a particular laptop. That's giving somebody an opportunity to go and mine the laptop for the PII. So that's what we need to secure.
Thank you very much. Let's please go to the laptop setup.
Yep.
Requirement number 2.2. We have to download software for each laptop. Can you walk me through the process from a user point of view?
Yes. So it's a cloud-based system, meaning you access it through a web browser. A volunteer opens the laptop, logs into the cloud storage, or actually logs into the IDP Okta, and then selects cloud storage, goes there, and also logs in automatically into Salesforce, also through the IDP, and says, okay, so I'm working on asset number, blah, blah, blah. This asset needs to have certain applications installed, which is modeled right here on the asset app, and looks at the cloud storage system, and then say, okay, I need to download Windows 10. And it also has the Microsoft Office and some other programs as well. So it downloads them directly to the laptop, installs them, and updates the asset as ready.
Okay, then let's go to the next requirement. We want to track the software name, the license ID, and the license expiration date. Can you walk me through again how you do that?
Sure, absolutely. So the cloud, the software that gets downloaded from the cloud system, the cloud storage system, I'm assuming will have the license that's going to be automatically provisioned for that particular laptop. So as that number of a license ends up on the laptop itself, they can copy paste that into the asset app object in Salesforce and say not only has it been installed, but here's the license. And therefore, 1 year from now, it's going to expire. So that information is stored in this junction object right here, which shows this is the software, but here we've got the license as well as the expiration date, which is linked to that serial number of the asset.
Okay. You mentioned, what is the volume of the, you call it the asset app object, expected volume?
So I'm putting, this is monthly, 4.5 million.
Monthly. How long do you store this information?
I can't recall if there's a particular 4.5 million a month. I wouldn't store it for very long. I would actually offload that to a data warehouse. I do not recall if there is a specific requirement to store this information for a certain length of time. For as long as there is an expiration date, you would want to have access to it somehow.
Okay, let's assume we have to store it until the license expires. What would be the volume of asset app?
Well, it would be a lot. If it's 4.5 million per month times 12, then we're into tens of millions of license records.
Mm-hmm. What type of relationship do you have between asset and asset app?
Master detail.
Okay. Is there any concerns you have of storing that many million records in the asset app record object?
Well, absolutely. The performance is going to be degraded. So in this case, if we want to store all this information on the platform, what I would do is offload this as soon as possible onto the data warehouse and then expose that as an external object. So it can be readily accessible.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the limitations of external objects?
In this case, I do not see, okay, accessing a certain number of external objects in a given period of time, 24-hour period. Since this is not going to be necessarily a daily transactional type operation, I don't see a problem here. Read-write, this is going to be a read function. Okay, and exposing the.
So how do the volunteers lock the serial number when it's a read when you have a OData 2.0 connection with a read operation only.
That happens after it's been offloaded to the data warehouse, which is going to be a scheduled job. So
do you have one object or two objects there?
Yes, great question. Well, if we're going to stick with the external object, we could definitely do a read write as an update. But in this case, I would use the asset app as the on-platform custom object where the data gets entered, and then the data moves off of the asset app onto the external object. So
depending on the age of the license, the user has to check in a different object?
They would have access to both records on the asset, and basically they would see either the asset app record exists, and therefore there is no external object record, or external object record exists but not the asset app. So it's one or the other.
What type of relationship between the external object and the asset object would be there?
So this would be a lookup, indirect lookup, where the standard object in Salesforce would be the parent to the child external object.
Okay. And do you consider serial numbers as some information which is needed to be secured?
Serial number is typically not something that necessarily needs to be secured. It's kind of like a vehicle identification number, which is public. It can be clearly seen on the laptop itself, as well as VIN number on the car.
So that means you would readily give all volunteers access to all serial numbers?
I believe the requirement is that only the ones that they are assigned to. So
how is this supported by external objects?
It is not. It is not in this case. So we would have to come up with a Lightning Web component, which then would be able to filter out the records based on a certain external ID or other filter category, perhaps.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Okay, fine. Maybe you stop recording now.
Absolutely.